Insights, take it away.
Thank you very much, Roger. Thank you, everybody, for having me here today. I really want to thank the event organizers for providing us this opportunity. At the very last minute yesterday, they said they had an opening and asked us if we would be interested. And of course, we always like to have the opportunity to share some of what we're seeing out in the marketplace and what our customers are experiencing and what we're doing. So we'll see how successful I am with that not falling over. So I thought I would start and just tell you a little bit about CollabNet if you're not familiar with us. We're one of the leaders in open source and application lifecycle management. We've been in business since about 1999. We're right up the road in South San Francisco. You might know us if you're using Subversion. We actually invented that piece of technology. That technology, of course, we set out into the wild and open source quite some time ago. We have about 10,000 customers around the globe. Our largest deployments are in the tens of thousands. I think our largest single customer is over in Europe. And they use our technology both internally and externally with their customers. They have about 80,000 users of it. And that's of our core TeamForge product. Around the globe, we have about 250 users. We maintain development labs in South San Francisco and Houston, Texas. We also have a development lab in Potsdam, Germany, outside of Berlin, and a fairly large facility in Chennai, India. We, of course, also have what you would expect in most software companies, the sales and support offices scattered throughout North America, Europe, Asia. I thought I would start by sharing a slide here with some quotes with some thought leaders out there on the new market realities and what we're seeing and what we're experiencing with our customers. The first comes to us from Microsoft and their innovative CEO. And that is that every company is becoming a software company. And we see this increasing and this trend increasing as time goes on. That even traditional manufacturers are starting to learn and need to learn software. And it is increasingly becoming a defining feature in a product. An example I had recently, my girlfriend went out to buy a new car. And she's a big fan of Hondas, and she bought a Honda Fit. Suits her really well. She's really happy with the car. But the interesting thing there was the most expensive feature she could put in the car was actually what in the auto industry they call the head unit, which is where the navigation and the communications all comes together. It wasn't that many years ago that it was the leather seats or the sunroof or the big engine that really drove the high-ticket item in the car. Now it's how we connect to the car, how our phones connect to the car that really drives that. If you go and you work with some of the automotive manufacturers, in Germany, in Asia, up in Detroit, you see the vast number of software developers they have that work for them now. You see that trend continuing as Ford opens a big lab right here in Palo Alto, because software is increasingly becoming important to their product. The next one comes to us from Forbes magazine, one of their editors. Mark Andreessen famously said that software is going to eat the world. Adrian Bridgewater said, if that's true, then open source is going to chew it up. This is a very interesting trend as we adopt open source to how do we become faster and innovate quicker. How I find this a very interesting trend that personally touched me, not that many years ago, I was involved in a smallish startup and we successfully exited that company, which is of course what we try to do in the Valley if you get involved in software development and small startups. One of the things we had to do to exit that company was go through all of our source code and assure the acquirer that we did not have open source in any of our source code and we hadn't leveraged any open source in any of our technology. Now we embrace open source as a foundation to get faster and move quicker. And the last one is the role of agility in the world. How do we adopt agile practices to get faster, to innovate quicker? And it's very popular in the Valley. We see it being very, very popular around the globe, and not just for software development. We had a very large company come to us, and they actually wanted us to come on site and teach them agile practices for their financial department. That's where they wanted to try to get faster, and they thought agile practices could help them innovate their line of business quicker. They were not writing code. These were financial managers worrying about balance sheets, worrying about financing their equipment out to their customer base. So DevOps, the title of the presentation was Actionable DevOps. This is very similar to a presentation we do on live webinars quite often, and it's really about how we help our customers take DevOps and have it become actionable in their enterprise. So I've put out here some thoughts that I typically use to explain what DevOps is. The first one is how it extends and expands both in breadth and depth the traditional ALM. One of the interesting things about DevOps, when we go and we speak about DevOps with customers, if you typically get 4 or 5 people in a room, you ask them what is DevOps, ask them to define it, you're going to get 7 or 8 answers. Half the people will change their answers after they hear what someone else says, which is what we would expect, because it is very much an iterative practice. But what I've put here is some of the things I think DevOps represents out there. The focus on ensuring quality through all the stages of the life cycle, the software development life cycle. The adoption of a set of practices and tools and policies that lead to continual improvement, and of course that continual feedback loop. It is not a set of tools you buy, but rather the integration of your people, of the processes and the tools that you use to execute those with. And it is about continual integration. It is and continual improvement. And it's a nonstop process. It's never a destination you get to, but rather a journey you go on that continues and continues and innovates up and on itself. We, of course, wouldn't be complete if we didn't have some of the quotes and some of the thinking from the large analysts. I've quoted Forrester and Gartner, 2 firms that we respect quite a lot, we work with quite a lot. I'm not going to read the quotes to you, but I will call out the spots that I've actually taken the time there to highlight and bold, which is this concept of the business, of how it drives business improvement. And when we talk to our customers about DevOps and what they're trying to do, the reason they're going on the journey is to align themselves with business. How do we align our development of software, our deployment of software to support the business needs and help the business innovate at the speed the business needs to innovate? We continually hear how, it never sleeps, it's going faster and faster all the time. How does DevOps help IT move from being the long pole in the tent, the pokey one, to being the leader and being the innovator of the business and to the business? That's what really drives and excites us. That's what really drives and excites a lot of the customers we work with. What I've pulled out here from my friends at Forrester are some of the trends that we see shaping DevOps and probably today and moving forward. We oftentimes ask these questions when we do webinars or go interact with customers, how these are impacting them and impacting their lives. And if you don't have access to this report, I believe this report is currently on the CollabNet website. So free, go there, you can download it from us. It's a very interesting read. The first and foremost one is the cultural foundation needs to be in place, which is really about developing trust and developing collaboration and rewarding that collaboration so people actually do it. When you think a lot about what we typically do historically in developing software in our silos, we oftentimes are aligning ourselves with different goals. Developers want to move fast, operations want stability. Well, you got to develop trust between the groups so that we can implement the processes that will make us successful and help us gain that speed. That's what this cultural foundation puts in place. It is a journey. It's not a destination you're going to get to, but it's going to continue, and it takes time. I think that's one of the things as management needs to do when you decide to start implementing and moving down this, this path, is to set realistic expectations. It's not going to happen today. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take a long, long time to get there. But you will see benefits along the way. The second one is, of course, automation. How do we increasingly use automation to improve the speed, to improve the quality, improve the efficiencies? Where can we find spots that we can automate things within silos, things between silos to gain that speed? Visibility. Visibility becomes really big, and when we talk about visibility, it's not just the visibility that we have to what we're doing that's very important, but how do we provide that visibility to our customers? How do we let those customers know the work that we're doing and how it's actually benefiting what they're trying to accomplish? So how is IT actually helping drive the business? How can we share that with our customers in the language they can understand? They might not understand what mean time to resolution means on an issue experienced in production. But if you can show them how you can make that happen faster and the impact that has financially to them, they'll embrace what you're doing. They might not understand it, but they will embrace it. Releasing at the speed of business, that's the trend. Once again, this whole idea of focusing on the business. Interesting thing on the survey, though, here, you can see of all the people that responded to this survey, only 4% were reporting back that they're being very, very satisfied with the ability of their organization to release at the speed being requested by the business. So clearly we got a lot of work to do here, a lot of improvement we can do. Number 5 is root cause analysis, and the information we're pulling back, going upstream with into the development lifecycle, is that data useful in solving problems? Once again, here you can see we have a lot of improvement we can do in our processes to really bring back data that helps people solve problems and do it quickly. The last one is partners. Increasingly, we rely on our partners, need to get them in the boat with us and on the journey. Are they accountable? Are they accountable for what we're trying to do? It's often difficult, as you know, when you are stepping outside of your organization to get your partners aligned with what you're trying to do. Once again, an area and a trend within DevOps adoption that needs additional focus by ourselves. What I've done here is just highlighted some of the challenges, and what I'm trying to accomplish with this slide is not to say that this is the developer challenge and this is the executive challenge, but rather to realize that we all need to understand when we go down this path, we're bringing a lot of disparate people with disparate tasks and disparate ways to think of success together for a common goal, but we often look at things differently based on who we are. Developers care very much about how well the code they're working on is performing. Operations cares more about how stable the world is. Is it a good day in operations? Most of the folks I know that are in IT operations define a good day as days their phones don't ring, because people typically aren't calling them to tell them, hey, great job. It's typically a problem. So throughout the life cycle, there's challenges. And sometimes those challenges are very, very specific to the role the person has in the organization. What we try to do with the implementation of the DevOps constructs out there is bring these people together. Simplifying the DevOps tool chain. I keep trying to remind myself to change this slide, because what we see with our customers, it is not a quote-unquote DevOps tool chain. Rather, they are tool chains, that there are multiple tool chains, that increasingly we empower the teams to pick the tools they need to be successful. As they pick those tools, you get this variety of ways to go and accomplish the task. And we don't end up with a single tool chain. Rather, we end up with multiple tool chains that the organization then needs to support. That's one of the reasons when if you can provide an overview, an ability to put a dashboard across all of these tool chains and provides insight, that can become very, very powerful for the organization. So it is not a single tool chain. They are often produced with disconnected tools. Typically today, we're not going out and buying any single platform to solve all these problems, but rather we have started to adopt a best of breed. I'm going to go get the tool that best suits my team for this job. I'm going to implement it. I'm going to go get a different tool to implement this task or this job, and that will continue, and that will create a lot of variance in that tool chain that we need to support. This, of course, leads to a lot of empowerment in the team, that they get the tools they want to get the job done, but it does increase complexity, and it also creates a management challenge when you got to manage this environment. And today, typically, there's not a single tool that can support this entire tool chain. It just doesn't exist. This is a slide I've adapted from an interaction with one of our customers that's one of the early adopters of our product, CollabNet DevOps Lifecycle Manager. Now, this isn't a product pitch. I will have a call to action at the very end if you want to see more about our tools, from our ALM, SCM solution, to our ARA solution, to our overall DevOps Lifecycle Manager. We have a booth here down in the Expedition floor. You're encouraged to go there. There's a gentleman there by the name of Phil Hamadal, one of our senior product engineers. He'll happily walk you through any of the tools, ask you the technical questions you have. This slide came from my customer about how he thinks about DevOps. And what he was calling to us when we were out engaging with him, the 6 C's that they're focused on in their organization. This company is a large entertainment business, and they had some very specific needs of how can they align themselves with their business, and how can they get greater visibility into the actual impact of the work they're doing, and how can they take that work and push it up to their management chain and their line of business owners. So it starts with the 6 C's, and as you can see, the C, of course, is continuous. The whole notion that planning never stops, it is always an ongoing phenomena. Now, this is such a big change. Myself, I entered this business in the late 80s, early 90s as a programmer. They quickly told me maybe I should go find a different job. I didn't write all that good of code, apparently. So they kind of said, maybe you could talk about the technology better than you could write it, because your algorithms aren't real tight here. You take 3 times as many lines of code as other people do to accomplish things. But in those days, as you remember, we had these big milestone documents. We had MRDs and PRDs, and we would work literally weeks, months on these documents, and we would take them into meetings with development staff and the business leaders, and we would have them sign off on these things. I don't know if you remember that they would actually have to sign these documents. That, oh yeah, that's what I want. That's the telemarketing solution I want IT to build for me. And this would go on for months, and then we would stop off and we would start writing the code, and we would write these big chunks of code. And the customer was like, oh, can we see it? No, not yet. You can't see it yet. We can't let you see it too early. And we would get well down, like 80% of the way down the path before we would actually have a demonstratable product that we could show the customer. And this actually happened to me. I worked at a very large bank right up the peninsula. So the day of reckoning came. We're all excited. We bring our big project, and we've done all the planning you've signed off on, and we've been coding, and we show it to you. And I'll never forget the woman's face. She was the vice president, owned this function. She looked at it, and she's like, that's not what I wanted. And then, of course, me, being the product owner of this, product manager owner of this, showed up with my binder and to make sure she knew she had signed off on all this. She didn't know what she was signing off on. She did not get what she wanted. And of course, we were 80% done with it. at this point in time. So the rework was enormous. So of course the project ended up being 18 months late, et cetera, et cetera. What we try to do with DevOps is we change that because it's continuous, right? We're going to show you the plan right away. We're going to write the first lines of code, and we're going to test that as we write it, and we're going to deploy it, we're going to show it to you. We're going to get this concept of the minimal viable product just so you can start to see it. And this is really what I think is just genius of the whole process. We're going to make you be in the boat with us the whole time. You're going to sit here, you're going to see it, you're going to see the screens, you're going to bring your business leaders that are going to explain exactly how these telemarketers are going to answer that phone and what they're going to say and how quickly they have to go through the screens, and we're going to develop this in real time together. And that's really the genius, I think, of DevOps, is how we bring everybody together and we continually integrate. And that integration moves forward rapidly, it gets into production rapidly, and we also get a rate of return that sustains the business. And you know what? The other beauty of it, if it's not working, you can walk away with it. And you don't have these situations that you're arguing over a sunk cost because the investment in dollars and, quite frankly, egos is so high you can't walk away from what you've done. Because as a very good friend of mine explained to me once, the most expensive thing in any negotiation like this, whether it's a business negotiation or development negotiation, is the cost of the person's ego, that they get involved in what they've built. The 6 C's in DevOps helps us overcome that. One of the unique things we think about DevOps and where we really change the conversation is this concept of the two-way street. Many conversations you have around DevOps start at planning on the far left, and you go all the way down to operations on the far right. And that's the conversation. It's a one-way street. One of the things that we're really excited to show to our customers, to show to the marketplace, that we're demonstrating is this concept of it being a two-way street. This concept of the feedback loop in real time, that at any stage of the operation, we take information not just downstream, not just to the right, but upstream, back upstream to the parties that are working there for that real-time feedback of how good is it? Is it hitting the mark? This becomes a very powerful thing, and one of the things that we really leverage in our solution, the DevOps Lifecycle Manager. This is a slide we like to use to kind of center people. It's not 100% accurate, we understand that, but what it does do is kind of show the overall life cycle that we go through. And when we talk about this tool chain, what do we mean by the tool chain? So, you know, I've just outlined some of the steps. You can see we got the epics and the tasks and the stories and the planning stage, or the build and the creation of the binaries and the testing at the very last stage before we pass it off to deploy it into production, the whole release stage, the monitoring stage, the operation stage, and just simply highlighted some of the tools that are responsible for that are available there. This is where we're going to get a little bit more product-centric in the conversation, which is, so what exactly is it that CollabNet does? Where does our product portfolio fit here? Oh, that didn't do exactly what I thought it was going to do. So we historically have been on the far left-hand side of this chart, really in the building, in the definition of the product, in the code, the writing the code, of all the work on collaboration of the developers to produce the code. So really the blue side of the marker, that is where TeamForge sit. It's our kind of flagship product in the market today. Very well installed in the market today, includes ALM and SCM all into one package. We have moved over to the operation stage really, really big in 2 ways. One way is with a piece of technology called Clarif. It goes by the name of Clarif by CollabNet. It is an ARA tool. So it is really about the automatic release or automation of the release of software environments, configurations into your production world in a very predictable way. The other piece is DevOps Lifecycle Manager that you see right at the top. The DevOps Lifecycle Manager sits above the overall process and the tools and provides that real-time feedback that will take you upstream from the operations world. The key features that product has is, first is integration of the tools. All those tools you saw on the tool chain, we have a very robust integration strategy. We understand it's about choice. It's not about limiting that choice. It's our job to work with the tools you currently have in place. We do that very well. So we integrate across a very wide swath of integrations with adapters that connect to the tools you currently have. It's about providing visibility and traceability. That's something we do today in our TeamForge product. We've extended and deepened that as we've brought the DevOps Lifecycle Manager product out, going both deeper and broader, more downstream into the operations world. It's about providing you that visibility, that feedback loop via a console. So this console that we have, it's very customizable. It will allow you to have a real-time view of almost anything you want to put a KPI around, be that a technical feature, be that a business feature. We'll build out that KPI. It comes with some automated, what we call tilets out of the box, but of course it's extremely customizable. The product does drive very hard on automation, back to one of those key principles of DevOps, of event-driven automation. How can we monitor the events that take place in the enterprise and automate things based on those events to improve both the reliability and the speed of execution? And the last one, which I just called out there, was this bidirectional feedback loop. How can we provide actionable intelligence both upstream and downstream through the product? Something that's actually quite unique right now in the market. This is just a high-level view of what that product looks like from the earlier view. So kind of taking that U diagram I showed you and laying it out horizontally. You can say it has an integration hub at the very bottom that allows you to integrate to the tools you currently have. It has a continuous feedback loop that allows you to take information and take that back upstream. And of course, it puts the console on there. That is the depth that I'm going to go into. I was asked not to have a product pitch here, so we do have the product, but we're not pitching the product. As I said, we'll do that down on the booth. And that really brings me to the conclusion. I see we have about 2 and a half minutes. So if anybody would have any questions they would like to ask me, I'd be happy to try to answer those. All right. Well, once again, I thank you for attending the session, and hope you've enjoyed the show. We've had a great time being here, Roger, and once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today.
Great, thanks a lot. You know, a lot of times people have questions that they don't want other people to know. So if you have some, go ahead and grab him. He'll be here. If not, the show floor is open. Okay. And you can go there, and then you're allowed to pitch on the show floor.
Okay.
Right? So thank you very much. And like I said, it looks like I see the roots of a track coming up.